Hi, everyone. In today's Connecting Conversations interview, we're going to be hearing from Matthew Krol, who is the co-owner, narrator, and showrunner for a popular YouTube channel called Extra Creditz. Extra Creditz has amassed nearly 2.5 million followers, and they post weekly educational videos about game design, world history, mythology, and other subjects. They're all animated videos, and the Extra Creditz team is made up of folks with backgrounds in game design, television production, art, literature, and academia. So thanks for joining, Matt. Nice to see you.
Yes, you too, you too. I haven't seen you in a little bit at this point now, like with the COVID times and all. So this is lovely.
The COVID times are putting a damper on a lot of things, which is why I started filming these in the first place. So for my students, Matt is a very, very good friend of mine. We've been friends for over a decade. We went to college together. But as I said in his introduction, he has a way cooler job than me. So he's going to share that with us today.
I have a different job than you. Yeah, no, again, I don't know how much Steph has divulged, but my name is Matthew Krol. I am the showrunner and narrator of Extra Creditz, and my pronouns are he, him.
Thank you. So actually, that was one of my first questions. So I wanted to ease into this with a really simple, clarifying question for my students.
Sure.
So I introduced you as co-owner, narrator, and showrunner for Extra Creditz, and I suspect the class at this point knows what it means to be a co-owner, knows what it means to be a narrator, but they might not know what a showrunner is. Can you describe what that is and how it applies to you?
So it's weirdly enough, the term showrunner is probably the most nebulous I've come across in the entertainment industry. I used to work in television for about 10 years, starting as an editor, then moving to a producer. And there, every time I was on a show, the role of the showrunner had some similarities, but was always different. And now what I do is a little bit different to that. Basically, it's a high up level producer position that how I sort of see it, that like oversees the entirety of the workings of the show, might have producers underneath you doing things, or maybe you are just sort of trying to keep tabs on all of the processes going on at the same time. And there's a little bit of sort of like creative directing rolled into that, though my company does have a studio director, which is sort of basically he and I are the ones that a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Zatkin, who decide the channel's direction and what we're doing. He handles a lot more of the business end of the actual corporation and the channel itself, and I handle all of the creative, but we work together in that. And I basically take whatever we decide and make sure that it gets distributed across the rest of the production team, from pre to production to post, and make sure that we get out at least anywhere between 2 and 4 animated videos a week. Which actually, we just had our all hands meeting because we're all, even before the pandemic, we weren't local. We're all over the globe. We have a writer in Hong Kong. We have an artist in Spain. We're about 12 to 14 people, depending on the load of the project load. And we just had an all hands meeting, and Jeff dropped the number. Last year, we released 140 videos.
Wow.
And I didn't know it. Like it all, like, I mean, I did every one of them, but I couldn't believe that metric when it hit me at the end. So, having
more than 2 a week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's between 2 and 4 a week. But yeah, so sorry, I diverged. Showrunner basically, in my current position, means making sure that the production of the channel is moving not only in the direction that we want it to, but also in a timely manner, I guess would be the
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned your background a little bit. So let's go back in time a little bit before we dig deeper into your work at Extra Creditz.
Sure.
So you and I went to Fitchburg State together, as I mentioned here. Can you talk about a bit about how your experience at Fitchburg led you to this work? So it's a big decade-long question. Maybe like what your internship experience was, and then the jobs you've had that led up to your transition to Extra Creditz.
Sure. Well, let's even start at the very beginning. And I just noticed that my water glass is actually a glass I think I might have misplaced from DACA, from our actual cafeteria when we went there. So apologies in advance for this stolen, almost over a decade long water glass. That's where it started, is right here. But then no, after college, when it was time for internship, or at the tail end, wow. So
Was it MTV? Is that where Fitchburg sent you to start?
That is eventually where Fitchburg sent me. There was a bit of a we don't even need to get into it. Yes, that is where they sent me by the end of it.
Yeah.
Though, to be fair, that was one that I went out and hunted for myself after a bit of a kerfuffle. And it was weird. I went out to New York I knew I wanted to come here because I wanted to be in production, but I didn't want to move to LA because I'm from the East Coast. And I went for 3 interviews. I was only scheduled for 2. I was scheduled at Conan O'Brien, and I was scheduled at a production company I think called Fourth Row Films. And I came out here and I stayed with a friend, and I went to the Conan O'Brien one, and I did fine. And they're like, "We'll let you know." I'm cool. And then when I was at my friend's house waiting for the next day's one before I came back, MTV called me. And they're like, "Oh, we got your resume from our system." And by their system, it was just the blanket, go to MTV's website, throw your resume at a thing. Like, this was not the college. This was not anything I like tried hard for. This was it was such a random thing. I worked so hard to get those 2 appointments that I was there for. And just literally going to their website, they called me. I went in that day later.
Wow.
They offered me the position then.
Wow.
And I just took it. I was like, this is a weird little bit of kismet on that. So I started there, interned there. They, back in the day, had a great internship program that could have been greater only now. Like, now they actually pay their interns, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But they used to rotate you through when a lot of production was in the building at 1515 Broadway. Because again, I was in it for the death throes of TRL, like before they brought it back. But like, they'd rotate you through like all their shows, and you got to see what you liked. And then if you vibed with a certain team after the first third of your internship, they would just be like, "Okay, great. You're in, live shows and news. You're in, this thing, you're on whatever." So, I ended up being in the control room, being on the live shows. Then I ended up PAing. Then a show lost an editor, and I was like, I can do that. And randomly I jumped from PA to editor because I just showed that, because I'd been cutting my own silly videos forever. Did that for a while, got rolled into some production companies, worked on shows, decided I wanted to not be locked in a small room for the entirety of my life, and switched over to producing due to some actually a showrunner, Ryan Ling, who created Guy Code and Girl Code back in the day, who believed in me, did that lateral jump. And then I'd been producing shows there for a while, and then I got sucked into YouTube, which is where I am now.
Yeah. Cool. So you transitioned from a kind of a huge media outlet. I mean, MTV was a force at the time.
Yes.
I don't know what it is to kids these days now.
I don't know either. I haven't been there in quite some time. Yeah.
And now you're at a YouTube channel, which is a really different service and streaming, and you don't have hundreds of people. So can you talk about some of the considerations you had to make when shifting from television to YouTube, and then some of the big differences that you've experienced the last couple of years?
Sure. So the interesting part, I came on at a transitional moment for the channel. The channel had been around for around 8 years beforehand, and I had been a fan for most of those. I ran into the runners of the channel at the time at a gaming convention at PAX in Boston, and we hit it off. I worked on some projects. I was trying to. Sorry, I'm going to turn off my phone. I was trying to pitch some television shows for them, like sort of move their content off YouTube into more traditional space, cable space, the one I knew. And then as the original creators decided that they wanted to retire, they asked if I would come on and do that. And again, when I started it, it was so different because I was used to working, like you said, with a large team, with a lot of support structures. And here we have a dedicated group of individuals, but that is exactly what we are. Like there's 12 to 14 of us across, it's animated. So there's artists, writers, our community manager, business side of things. And because we have so many shows, there's multiple artists and writers, etc., musicians we work with, etc., to write original scores. So it became everything I had learned piecemeal in a lot of different jobs. I now got to put into effect kind of all at the same time. Also, it should be noted, especially if people are interested in getting into this side of things. My journey was a weird one, and even so, because I didn't personally build this brand from the ground up, um, I was able to come into something successful and then uh, I feel make it grow and even become more successful. Whereas, but even so, my point is when I started at the YouTube job, it was a financial risk sort of to take. I was doing okay in television, and I jumped over to the YouTube thing because it was a thing I believed in and I loved. And we do videos on game design, history, and mythology, which are all things that I'm hyper passionate about. So I was like, oh, okay. Like I basically, for lack of a better term, like took the pay cut and did more work, and now but overall the transition made me happier because I'm doing things that I'm actually like passionate about, and I'm not just like helping get out the European Music Awards, like, which is cool. There's nothing against the EMAs, love that show, but like it's not really my passion.
Yeah. I remember when I mean I was staying at your place the weekend you were mulling over taking this job or not, and we
Oh yeah,
chatted a
yeah,
lot about it.
yeah,
I
yep.
happened to be out, and I think it's important for the students to hear about kind of the independent risks that a YouTube channel is, because it sounds really cool and flashy, but it is a lot. So can you talk a little bit about like the self-sufficiency you have, like what's going on in this room? How do you right? Like you've got your whole room soundproofed, but this is your apartment.
Yes.
So can you
So
talk about kind of that individualism part of it?
sure. I worked from home before everyone was doing it. At this point, so I was kind of ready when the pandemic hit. Yeah, this I spend the majority of my actually all of my work hours now here, and also alone. Weirdly, I have calls and all that stuff, and I know that we're all socially distancing now, etc. But like, I came from a group like a here's a bullpen of people or offices, and you could go talk to people in different productions. And now I have to do Zoom meetings, etc. As we all do now. It's just sort of like that was a first interesting transition before it was like one to protect people.
Right, right.
um, and yeah, so I'd been doing podcasting for a while, and I did some voiceover work, just real independent stuff on and off when I was producing for TV. And so I soundproofed this office. I have a decent amount of equipment. I do all my records here, all my narration. I've built out a way that I can manage my time and not get lost in the day. Though, granted, these days it's always harder. As far as self sufficiency is concerned, the weirdest part to get used to was not having, other than like a due date for productions I've agreed to establish, not having a set due date for small tasks. I make all of those, not only for me, but for a majority of my team.
Mhm.
So it was such an interesting sort of and it was rocky in the beginning. For the first couple of months, I didn't quite know how to do it, because you go to a job, even if it's a production job, even if you're a little bit higher up,
Mhm.
you still have someone that's like, okay, you got to do like this, and this. And here it's less of that and more like, okay, I know these things have to get done. What is the time frame I can do? Like every day I write out, because I found it works best for me, a handwritten checklist based
Mhm.
on all my Google calendars and my Asana tasks and everything. But like, if I don't see it down that I can actually like physically scratch off with a pen,
Yep.
it just doesn't function. So I found solace in that. Also, scheduling software is very lovely. That helps a lot. I'm sorry, did that answer
Yeah,
where you were
no, it
going?
does. It does. I think it's important to think about how much solo work you're doing, because pe- millions of people are seeing it, but you're by yourself in a room, and that's a really weird dynamic.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
helpful. So that takes me, I guess, to my next question. As you talk about scheduling and planning, can you talk us through from the inception of a video idea to publishing the video? What does
Yeah.
that look like for your team?
So, okay, let's go with the one that sort of Extra Creditz, the game design one, was the one that started this whole channel off. And actually, there's an episode coming out soon we're basically calling it what kind of designer are you, because there's different in game design, there's different fields. There's experienced designers, level designers, systems designers, etc. And my business partner Jeff is also, he is a game designer with like over 20 years of experience. Before he did this, he was all in the game space, so he was excited to help new designers figure out what, I mean, maybe a little bit kind of like what you're doing here, Steph, like helping people sort of like figure out, okay, here's this big world. What aspect do you want to be in? So he wanted to write a script. We generally, depending on time frame of other things, if it's an individual writer, we have different time frames, etc. But the script goes through about a week worth of like from rough draft to final, where I not only go through and try to format it best for the type of shows that we do, but also put it a little bit more in my voice. I'll sometimes add a bit of what I'll attempt at humor into it. That then goes off. Then I'll start a record, which then gets sent to a lovely audio editor, my buddy Mac, who will bring it back and show me what he's done there. I make any final tweaks, send that off with the script to an artist. We talk about that. Sometimes there's notes in the script to say like what things here, but a lot of our artists are just the sharpest cookies in the box, for lack of a better term. Like they will find things in the script to make it like, to punch it even harder. I don't want to downplay the sort of creativity that they actually like give some of these drier topics. That
And are
takes,
they like graphic designers or just artists?
they're all illustrators, actually. And I always say animators, and that's not quite exactly, because our style is animation technically, but it's also kind of a bit of a staccato kind of like frame, when then we'll have occasional movement. Because again, if we're doing two to four of these a week, we don't have a ton of time to like give everything the amount of polish that a actual like full-blown animation thing would
And
have.
I'm going to link your channel and some of your
Yeah.
game design videos below, because we have a chapter on game design as well.
Oh, great. Good. So yeah, and this one I'm discussing right now isn't even out yet. I think it comes out, if I'm looking, if today, a week from today.
Oh,
So,
it'll be out by the time this video goes out.
Great.
So maybe
So
I'll link that one.
it's
to
out.
Cool.
So then the artist has a scheduled amount of time, depending on the complexity of the video, comes back to me for art notes along with the writer. We go back and forth, tweak anything that needs to be tweaked there. I then send it off to our edit house. We have a lovely team in Indianapolis who we met at a convention. Again, all of our connections, and hopefully we can touch on this a little bit later, are seemingly random, but I don't believe them to be, and I can go sort of into that.
Yeah, I got a question on that coming up for you.
Networking sort of thing. They edit it, send it back to me one more time, because again, because we go so quick, often the timing of the animations is not sort of frame perfect. So, or if we have to, sometimes we have sponsors, so we have to put the sponsor information in, and the bumpers and the sort of piecing it all together, comes back to me. I upload it, and then our community manager Arthur will go and do all of the SEO search terms and the descriptions and the titles and stuff that we've sort of worked out, and then schedule it to be posted, and then make sure that our socials all do the things and interact with comments as they come in. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the journey per episode. And
what's that length of time?
So for a credits episode, if a non-sponsored credits episode, we can get done in roughly 5 weeks.
Okay.
If it's sponsored, then we have to, like, in the history and mythologies take longer, because it's a little, not to say it's more research heavy, but I feel like game design has tenets and rules, but also it's a lot of opinion and sort of you can kind of sort of get through that, especially if you have a seasoned designer writing for you. Whereas our history writers like to do a ton of research, and our history writer Robert Rath, who is amazing, he's an expert on a lot of stuff, but not everything. And our patrons on Patreon vote for our history topics in a sort of this weird tiered system we have. It's quite fun. So he doesn't even know what he's going to be doing in a month or two. So he has to do all the research, etc. So that takes longer. History episodes and mythologies tend to take 6 to 7 weeks. And then if you have a sponsor on any of them, normally tack, depending on how much oversight they need, another week or two. Just because it just takes time for larger, like if we're making the Audible read, right? Like we're going through their ad agency. And so that's going to take at least 72 hours from when we sent it to get anywhere it needs to go. So we have to budget that time in.
Interesting. Okay. And so you touched upon this a little bit, so I'm going to ask more deeply. So you do a lot of other things besides Extra Credit. You have your podcast, you do freelance work. Can you talk about the other stuff you do outside of this full-time job and how it is all meshed together to find this job and the networking?
Sure. So let's see. I do the podcast. I've been doing the podcast for 5 years. It's
What's
called
your podcast
Oh,
called?
oh, here we go. Plug time. It's called The Only Podcast About Movies. There is an asterisk in that title somewhere. I'll let you find it. Yeah, we've been doing that for about 5 years with my amazing co-host Shahir Dowd, who will not stop telling you how he went to film school. But so I've been doing that forever. Before that, even I think back when even around college time or right after, Steph, you might have even been in one of these. We used to do same night movie review.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to link that below.
Oh yeah, okay, fair. So so I've been doing that forever. I've been doing critique and review for a long time. And so I put it into podcast form because that was just sort of the easiest way to go about it rather than making videos for it. Did freelance voiceover work for a long time, just getting, and that was really through excuse me, my production jobs that I had. The first time it happened was, oh, we need a temp track to get this timing out. And then the director heard it and they're like, oh, did you do this? Yeah, let's just keep this. And that's how it starts. Also, side note, here's a production thing I want to harp on quite a bit. Sometimes you will have lovely moments in your career where you're a PA and an editor quits and you can edit and you can start editing, or you use your temp voice as a track in a thing and then they want to use that thing. Something I want to make it very clear to people. If you're ever in a situation where you have one job and you are now offered a sort of different job based on, even if it's something you really want to do, like I still want to do more voice acting.
Yeah.
But if you are given that opportunity, it is 100% fine, and you should ask about the different level of compensation it will be for that.
Yes.
I truly believe that there is not a thing like, oh, like, well, you just use your voice, then you can like use it for your reel or whatever. It's like, no.
I can't feed myself with a demo on my reel.
Yeah, like it's incredibly important, and both of those times, the PA to editor and the you know, temp track to voiceover artist, both of those actually the editor one was harder. They fought back on it and I fought back, and eventually I got what I wanted. And the VO one, they're like, oh yeah, of course. Like, so you're going to get different reactions if you do that, but it is so important, even if it's something that you're like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I've had so many friends just start doing things like that for kind of free in addition to their other jobs.
Yep.
And it's never a good place. You will always get more value if you value what else you are bringing to the table, even if you have a few setbacks. I truly believe that. Sorry, that became a bit of a
No, I agree. I used
special.
to have that when I ran my website as well, and companies would send me free product to post about it. I got to the point where I was like, well, 10,000 people are going to see this.
Yeah.
And I have bills, so I would like to charge you $150 and send me the free stuff.
There's a weird mental thing we get to, because when we're in those moments, we're dealing with one person, but that one person who might not even control the coin purse is still like a limb of normally a larger company that definitely has money to, they were going to do it anyway.
Right.
Like, just because you're doing it doesn't mean they shouldn't pay for it.
Like Wayfair has money to send me if I post about their furniture, but you get shy asking, and you forget to value yourself when you're just starting out. So that was a really good sidebar. But back into how that helps you network.
So sorry. Yeah.
Yes, no, that's good.
So one of my passions forever has been gaming, both video games, tabletop, board game, etc. So I go to gaming conventions. I used to go to PAX back when conventions were a thing, and MagFest and Gen Con and a lot of these great things where I just started meeting a lot of people. I met the original co-creator of the channel I'm on, Extra Creditz. I went to their panel. I then didn't stay for questions because they were swarmed. I'm like, I'm not going to wait 45 minutes to talk to this guy. Just say, I like your stuff. I went out that night, came back after a few parties, saw him in the lobby at 1:30 and was like, okay. And I went over and said, hey, here's my card. I'm a producer, If you ever thought of bringing stuff to television, hooray, and left. And then the next day, his assistant got me a email call, and then that whole thing. And that's why I'm here. Cool. I literally would not have this job if I did not go to that convention and be at the right place at the right time. Like it's like a combination of all of those things. Like
And then, so just to cut in,
yeah.
because we know these conventions cost money, but because of
Mm.
all your other side jobs, you've gotten press passes. Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes. Good point. So what I used to do before I was part of a company that could just get these things because we are in the zeitgeist of the thing, based on the old thing, same night movie review, which was never anything but like a super tiny
Hmm.
uh, dead YouTube channel that uh, didn't publish anything really at those points. I would still apply for a press pass, which is far cheaper to do, and sometimes, depending on the size of the convention, you can apply to have a panel.
Mm.
Um, and that is a great way to not only like when especially when back then I never saw too much conversion from like doing the panels, but it was really good practice for now.
Yeah, and you
Like
guys will learn about this in your media and self promotion class in your last semester. So we'll get more into that with your a year and a half from now when you're almost ready to
just
graduate.
yeah, put a pin in it for a year and a half.
We'll get there.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that yeah, there's a lot of sort of tips you can do and tricks sort of around that. And to be honest, uh just putting yourself in places where people you might want to work with might be is always that's sort of half the battle. The other battle is making sure that you have something to like. It's not sort of enough, I think, to just go up and introduce yourself and say, hey, I love your stuff. If you just want to be a fan, like I do that to people all the time, that's great. Let people know that you appreciate their work. But if
Right.
you're looking to work with someone, you definitely want to know like what you're trying to do with them, not just you want to work with them.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm a fan of this thing. Well, I do audio mixing. And I noticed, sometimes you do some more complicated stuff. Are you ever in need of that sort of, like that sort of thing? Here's my reel. Boom. And then like just a quick slight interaction. The 1:30 in the morning interaction I had back then was like 2 minutes. I didn't want it was 1:30 in the morning in a hotel lobby. I didn't want to waste his time, but I also saw an opportunity. So there's that balance of like you don't know these people, even though in my case I'd watched their stuff forever. There's a weird sort of editors
Hmm.
and viewership thing where you feel like you know a person and
Hmm.
you don't.
Right.
So you have to kind of get over that. But yeah, I
Cool.
think it's a combination of all those things. Yeah.
So time has flown by. So
Yep.
my last question for you, our last 5 minutes or so, and you've already talked to us a little bit, but what would you recommend some of these students do now to prepare themselves for these types of careers? So we've talked about just even if nobody's watching your work in large quantities, having it to apply to a press pass and save yourself some money, being at these events helps. What other kind of things would you recommend for these students who keep in mind are commuters in
Hmm.
central Massachusetts trying to have a job in media?
I think so. I'm going to do a twofold answer. One is a bit more of a like it takes a village approach, but then there are, I think, individual things that people can do by themselves. But the first thing is if you want to create something, find a like-minded group of people that want to create with you. I know that that's hard, especially not in like a major metropolitan area sometimes or whatnot. But even back when, I mean, when we were at Fitchburg, you found people, Steph. I know I found people. Like there are, groups around that you can sort of use to make things a little bit bigger than yourself. It's also important, I think, in those moments to not just work with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes that will fail you for
Yeah.
multiple reasons we don't have to get into here. So I do think that there is and doing that, even if the projects aren't great, does sort of teach you and sort of get you to the point where you know how appropriate to reach out even to anybody in that field. So that's sort of on the side of it. As far as individual, uh weirdly enough, and this is the most boring answer, and I'm terribly sorry, but like it's actually being able to schedule and follow through your work time, whatever it is. I'm not passionate about figuring out workflows and timing out my days and all that stuff, but the as soon as I realized that like that's something that needs to happen and I need to get good at it, it freed me up to do more creative work that I was passionate about. And not only that, getting to a point where that work might be seen by more people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the least sexy answer I can possibly give.
But
Other
it's
than
true because especially when this is an online course, right? Nobody wants to sit and stare at their computer and read a textbook, but that gets you to the next point, which
yeah,
gets you like sometimes you just have to do the parts of the job you don't want to do.
and also just make the thing. I think
Yeah.
that's the weird. That's again. I often I feel like a trite sort of answer, and I hope I'm not sounding too platitudic. I don't know what the right word for that would be. I guarantee you it's not that. But like, just make the thing. Are you passionate about? I was just watching. I was just watching a YouTube video about breaking the YouTube algorithm, and I was like, "Are you passionate about just making exploit videos of like systems and design or something like that? Just make it. Just make a thing. It's gonna be bad. Cool. Then you get to make the next thing that is slightly less bad. There's a reason why Steph and I will never show you our same night movie review. It's bad, but we made it. I guarantee you we learned something from it.
It was
And we
fun.
learned even if it's not, even if what you learn is to like, oh, let's not do that again. Like there is a value in just creating. Case in point, this is a tangent, but like in the pandemic, we're all looking for other things we can do, but also kind of in the house. I just started getting into 3D printing. I
Mm.
know nothing about it. I am trashing it. I have failed so many prints, but each time I'm like, oh, I could have used a support there. Oh, I could have used a different wash here. Like, go to the YouTube. Oh, yep, that's what happened to me. And you can just learn from it. I think that's the best advice I can give is if you want to be something in media, make something with that skill set in that field and know that and be comfortable with the fact that the thing you make now probably isn't going to go anywhere, but that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because A, you love it, and B, you can learn something from it. I
Yeah.
think that'd be my full spectrum of advice to get into this weird
Yeah.
nonsense industry.
Yes. That's awesome. Actually, you know what? I think that's a really good stopping point. We're gonna end it on a high note.
Okay.
So thank you very, very much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no problem. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, Steph. And if you ever need any glassware,
I know where to
uh,
steal it from.
you can always just steal it from the Fitchburg State College cafeteria. No one report me.
You've crossed state lines. It's
Yeah, they're not
it's
coming for
fine.
this.
And so before everybody clicks off this video, down below, there's going to be a link to Extra Creditz. There's going to be a link to the Extra Creditz game design video. There's going to be a link to the only podcast about movies. And so take a look at all of those. Let me know what questions you have, and we'll see you for the next career conversations.